What does it really take to go from local football to wearing the green and gold for Australia? And are most athletes focusing on the wrong thing?
This is Elite Breakdown, where we speak to athletes about their stories, take lessons, and translate into something that you can actually use.
Today, we're joined by Charlotte, or Charlie Grant, as we more affectionately know her, a professional footballer who has earned her place representing Australia with the Matildas and is currently over in the UK playing for the Tottenham Hotspurs. Charlie shares an inside look at the work, mindset, and resilience required to build a career at the highest level. From South Australia to the Matildas and now the WSL as one of the fastest rising fullbacks in Australian football. We want to know, when did it go from I just love playing football to this could really be a career for me? All right, Charlie. So we want to touch a little bit on your transition from playing at a local level to professional football. So what does that pathway to professional football actually look like for female players in Australia?
Yeah, I mean it's very different to for everyone, I think. But for me, I started off playing at school, and then from there, my parents saw how much I loved the game and how much I wanted to be involved more in the game. So yeah, Dad took me around to a few different clubs, and I went to a club called Cumberland United Women's Football Club, and I couldn't believe how many girls, played the game, and so I felt really at home there, and played there for a couple of years, and then from there there was they have state talent identification tournaments, so a few players from the club get nominated and play in those tournaments. So I was fortunate enough to be nominated and play in those tournaments and be there selected into the state programs. Where I played in the state programs for about 6 years, so 2 years in the under 13s, 2 years in the under 15s, and then 2 years in the under 17 program, um, and then yeah, I went into Adelaide United from there. I was very fortunate that our club, our state coach had a connection with Adelaide United, so he, filtered some of us players in and gave that opportunity to be a train-on player where we could show ourselves what we're capable of, and yeah, I was lucky to be offered a contract, and that's where sort of my professional career kicked off.
So would you say that's sort of the turning point in your journey? And just quickly before you answer that, Jay, I couldn't be prouder that you've called it football. Jaimi is an Aussie rules girl and always sort of refers to it as soccer. So, but yeah, is that the turning point there, Charles?
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't even realize I called it football, by the way. I thought I was still a soccer girl, but anyway. But yeah, I think that's probably when I was in Adelaide United. That was always a dream of mine to play for Adelaide United. I grew up watching them. I grew up going to the games, so it was amazing to finally put on that jersey and play for them. And I guess it just gives you, like, being part of that, you then, I think, as a professional athlete, as any athlete, you just strive for more. And yeah, and then I wanted to play overseas. I wanted to, travel the world with the game. So I think from there, that's when I explored different options as well.
Was it a big jump in professionalism for you? Did you have to really, I guess, change any of your habits, how you were training, eating, when you made that transition from playing, I guess, more locally to, all right, I'm actually taking this seriously now and could make a career out of this? Was there some habits that you had to shift early on?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the load changes big time, like not just the number of trainings during the week, but then also your gym sessions, and even mental load, like the tactics and things like that, that I feel like that takes a lot of load on the body. So naturally you have to fuel more, recover more. But I think being in the state program, I was really fortunate to, be drip fed some of those details, some of like how to fuel your body correctly and how to recover correctly. So thankfully to how they prepared it made the transition easier. Um, and yeah, that really helped with that change into the professional environment.
Yeah, so I guess you've talked about your transition into United, and you say you were fortunate enough to obviously score a contract. I think you've worked hard enough, worked hard and earned that opportunity. What point did you realise that maybe the Matildas was a possibility?
Yeah, I was just thinking about that before I jumped on the podcast, and it was really quite young. Like, I think when I first started playing football, soccer, when I was at school, mum and dad took me to to different W League at the time, A League now, women's games, and he pointed out like Sam Kerr, Caitlin Ford, playing at Sydney FC, and he told me how, they play for the Matildas, and I think I would have been around like 9 years old, and I was like, oh, like that's something I want to do. Like I want to play for my country and like travel the world, and they were, I think that that saying of you can't be what you can't see, and I think that's a huge one. Like having that exposure, going to those games to see, that it is possible for women to, play at a professional level. Yeah, really inspired me to play for the Matildas.
I guess you just mentioned Sam there. Obviously, I'm sure she was a large figure in your development. Is there any other female athletes or any athletes for that point there that you looked up to as you were sort of coming through the ranks, or even younger than that, but before you realised that this was an opportunity?
Yeah, there was a couple, the Matildas girls obviously were like big inspirations for me, but in particular Emma Checker, she's from South Australia, played at Cumberland United Women's Football Club, so the club that I grew up playing in, and she followed that pathway into the Matildas. So, seeing that someone from Adelaide can play for the Matildas was yeah, amazing to see, and really motivated me and inspired me to, follow in her footsteps. But outside of soccer, I'd have to say Sally Fitzgibbons has been a big role model for me. She's a surfer, and my mum actually got me her book quite young, and it was all about her lifestyle and like the sacrifices she made to be a professional athlete. And at the time that I committed to like not drinking, I think thought that was a really important like 1% that could make the difference to, get to the Matildas. And I read in her book that she was doing that. So to see that our lifestyles aligned, I think was a real big factor to follow in her footsteps as well.
So you mentioned around visibility as a female athlete and how important that is for you and your journey in seeing that this could really be a career path for you. And it sounds like your journey from local to professional football was in a sense fairly linear, moving from program to program. Absolutely not without that hard work. And you did mention those one percenters. So for any young female athletes or just footballers in general who want to reach the top level, do you have any advice around like what were those key one percenters that you think really took you from, just being a good footballer to being a great footballer?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the biggest thing that's helped me in my career is doing that extra 10 minutes, 15 minutes of practice after training, before training, on like a day off, like growing up. I think that's really helped taken my football to the next level. I think if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be the player I am today. And I still do it today. I still think, just an extra 15 minutes can go a long way. And naturally growing up, I wasn't actually the most probably naturally gifted footballer. I was my strengths and like my fitness and my speed. So I had to really focus on developing that skills. But I think, yeah, it's important for any player to, yeah, just refine those skills. And I think that can take you a long way.
Is that something that you would just do by yourself, or did you have any mentors or people that you like reached out to, other players or coaches, or did you just you and a ball in the park trying to refine those skills?
It depended where I was at the time. Like, mum and dad would take me to my brother's cricket, and I would always be juggling during the whole day of him playing cricket. The cricketers were probably annoyed with the sound of the juggling going. If there was a wall around, I would be passing on the wall. I think growing up, like, we have a wall in our garage, so I was kicking the ball against the wall, like, a lot of my years, so I feel sorry for the neighbours hearing that as well. But yeah, a lot of the things were done on my own, but occasionally my parents would throw the ball to for me and things like that, which was really helpful. Or like if sometimes some my teammates would get to training early and go out to training before and practice on what we wanted to. But yeah, it depended on the situation at the time, but I just try to make use of what environment I was in.
And now I'm by no means in the inner sanctum of the football world. Sean's just transitioned into that world. So you guys, I know, have bonded over some of that. But the round ball game, I hear often, he's fallen in love with it. How do you find, I hear that the sport it really is a big skill focus. And like you've said, that's what's helped to develop you as a player. And maybe Sean can talk a little bit on this from his experience as well. But how have you found that sort of balance between your strength and your speed work and then also the skill side of things?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think yeah, it's really hard because I feel like I guess I'm going through it a little bit right now. Like I've been so focused on trying to perfect my technique and technical side of my game that I think I've lost a little bit of my identity of being that high speed running, that getting in behind, and so it's really hard to find that balance. But I think it's just really important to trust yourself and trust your strengths. And like, yes, it's important to do what the coach tells you to do, but you're there for a reason. So it's important to always trust your strengths and yeah, use those strengths that you're capable of.
Now, I just want to quickly touch back there, Charles. Jaimi and I have both been fortunate enough to do a little bit of work in cricket, and I tell you what, we probably would have been watching you juggling on the sideline. With all due respect to cricketers, my God, those were long days, weren't they, Jaimi? Very, very long days. So I do not blame you at all, Charles, for juggling the ball. I think Jaimi might have even taken up football herself if she was subjected to that when she was younger. But hey, we're always so grateful to get you back here at PEAQ when you are in Adelaide, and definitely makes my heart warm. There's been a few times where I've logged on to social media and had a couple of our Adelaide Jags girls, post online. Still my favourite footballer, Charlie Grant, but often, well, more recently anyway, in those times, you've been dealing with some injury setbacks. So, you've had a knee issue that you've been dealing with recently. I guess, number one, have you had a few of those throughout the journey, or is this the first one? And how have you stayed motivated through those times where you haven't been able to get out on the pitch?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for always having me at Peak. I love the facilities. I think they're incredible. But yeah, this knee injury has probably been one of my biggest setbacks. I did have one when I was a little bit younger, a hamstring one that took me out for a couple of months. But I think the timing of this knee injury in particular, being very tight with the Asian Cup and trying to push back for the Asian Cup and not making back in time, that was really hard to take and probably one of my harder moments in my career. Um, but I think during the rehab, I think the biggest thing that like kept me motivated was, just breaking things into smaller goals, and like we'd have like CV, like a hard conditioning session, on the assault bike and things like that. And the reward of that year, when you finish, you feel really good on that. So I think it's important to embrace those little joyful moments, and also like I'd stop, BFR, when you have to put that around your the blood flow restriction. Like when I didn't have to do any of that anymore, it's like a little uh tick off the goal list. Like I think it's really important in setbacks to have little goals that you want to tick off, and that really helps you to focus on what you can control and not feel too overwhelmed of, being back for Asian Cup, which unfortunately I wasn't, but, it helped me stay focused on what my goal was, which was getting my knee right.
And I guess in those circumstances, and I hope this doesn't exacerbate, what the point I'm about to touch base on. In both male and female instances, we've talked to lots of athletes who, sport is a large part of your identity. And when your ability to compete in that is taken away, and I'm sure probably you've got a million people asking, are you going to be back for Asian Cup? Or, is that challenging to work through? Do you try to find things outside of football and outside of training to distract yourself? Or is it that all just part of the process and you're happy to navigate that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, it's so true. I think football does become very much as your identity, but I think I've done a lot of work on trying to, find things outside of football that make me happy. So whether that's at the moment, I'm really enjoying just reading or going for walks and or going for coffee with friends, and I think that's really important to have. So then, life doesn't feel like it's just football, and that you do get a break from that, but. Funnily enough, the timing of my knee injury, I wasn't actually playing much before that, so usually I would say yes, it'd be a lot harder to be away from football, but I think the timing in a funny way was actually refreshing for me because I was really struggling and I wasn't really enjoying it. And, like it was, I think, taking that step away, being injured, it made me fall in love with the game a little bit more. As much as there's been some hard moments because I've been, missed out on some opportunities, like I feel like I'm starting to enjoy the game for itself rather than, um, yeah, getting caught up in, the non-selections.
From the outward looking in, you always seem like such a bright, bubbly, sort of happy person. And what we've heard you say, you have that ability to find joy in moments of you, as you've just mentioned, when you have setbacks. Is there anything from the mental or psychology side of things, whether it's to do with your injury and setback or just being a professional athlete in general? Are there any specific things like journaling or breath work or any little things that you find really help you through that moment?
Yeah, there's actually something that I do every day that was from the guy that wrote the Resilience Project, and he suggested to write three things that you're grateful for every day, and I've been doing it for a bit over a year now, and I think that's been a really good way. That was really helpful during my injury because some days it felt like you know there was nothing that went well, but then when you look back at it, you're like, oh, you know what, breakfast was really nice, and or yeah, that feeling after that cardio session was great, and you just focus on the little joys, and it helps you put life into a positive perspective.
Now, I'm not sure if many people know sort of early in your career, before, the Matildas and before Tottenham, which obviously everybody knows about now, that you made the big move to Sweden, which is massive. I guess what I think people perceive is that you just literally move to Sweden and go kick a ball around a pitch. But I want to delve a little bit, into behind the scenes. How does that come about? What are the challenges there? I think about things like, for example, did you have to open a Swedish bank account? Who looks after your housing? What's your support network like over there? Feel free to dive into that experience as deep or as shallow as you like.
Yeah, it was an incredible experience moving to another country, but definitely daunting in some ways. At the time, it was a very quick decision. The transfer window was closing within a couple of days, and they reached out to me within those days, and I thought, well, you never know when the opportunities are going to come up again. So I just said yes, and just and took it. And then a couple of weeks later, I was flying over to Sweden to where I didn't know anyone or anything. But I think what's so special about sport in general is, everyone's there for the same reason. They want to play football, they want to win and be the best versions of themselves. So it was. You can quickly make those really nice connections with different players. And I was really fortunate to have some players that I think it was the second day someone took me out for breakfast and then someone invited me for dinner. So I think I was really fortunate for the team that I went into that made me feel really comfortable. But yeah, it was the things I didn't think about that were a bit more daunting, which was like opening a bank account and you're getting the forms and it's all in Swedish and I do not know what anything is anything's being said there. So but you just have to use the resources that you have, which talk to the staff, and they just helped set it up for you. And then fortunately at that club I went to, they did have apartments where players can can go into. Some clubs don't have that, so I was really fortunate to have a place to easily settle into. But then again, I was only 19 then, so I hadn't, been cooking on my own. I had done a little bit because I would moved to Sydney with a host family, but this was like all on my own, no help. And then doing washing on my own, cooking, and I think when you're also trying to, have energy to set yourself up to live, and then also, have energy to train, meet new people, and cook for yourself and fuel yourself. It was definitely overwhelming at times, and you just want to call your parents for help, and they're asleep because the time difference. So it was all a lot to get used to, and still sometimes I find it hard. My fiance is back in Adelaide at PEAQ every day. And then and then and then my parents are just like they're so helpful with everything, but you sometimes just want a hug from them, and you can't get that because you're on the other side of the world. But yeah, definitely a lot of challenge being overseas, but I've learned a lot about myself being over here.
I was going to thank you, Charles, for sharing your beautiful partner, Lockie, with me. For those who don't know, Lockie's always here. He's got an unbelievable physique, and I've got a lot of bromance. So just know that I'm looking after him very well.
He's giving him all the cuddles that he's not getting.
Just quickly though, if you had your time again, or if you're talking to somebody who's about to do it, whether they be an athlete, a support staff member, or anybody else in any other realm who's making that move overseas, do you have a couple of pieces of advice, that you would give to them, particularly, I think, in the circumstance you're moving to, let's say, a predominantly non-English speaking country?
Yeah, I think the best advice I can give is to take your time with it. It's not going to be, you're not going to feel comfortable straight away. It took me, months to feel comfortable. And I think that's an important factor, to not put pressure on yourself to feel settled straight away. Um, Put yourself out there, meet, whether if you're into a team environment, go for coffee with people, meet other people. If you're not in a team environment, it's a little bit harder to put yourself out there, but I think that's really helps you settle in a place when you do meet other people, and I think it's an amazing experience. So if you do have the opportunity to take it, because you always have home to come back to, and I think these opportunities are incredible, and you can only do it for so long. So yeah.
Do you feel like it made you, in any sense, a better athlete, having forced independence and having to, maybe do some of those tasks that mum and dad might have done for you at home when you were 19? Did that have any flow-on effect to your diligence or those one percenters to do with your football specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it improves your discipline for sure, because you have to be looking after your body even more. And I think now even I'm noticing I'm still learning all the time, but now I'm noticing fueling my body even more. I feel like I'm being more diligent in taking protein straight after training, taking it at night, so I'm fueling my body correctly. And yeah, I think things like that definitely helps you to develop as an athlete.
I know you mentioned before you've always got home to come back to. I might be speaking outside of my lane here, but we'll have you back at Adelaide United any time, Charles. Don't worry about that. But sort of in saying that, what do you think you've seen overseas that maybe we could implement here back in Australian football that could elevate the game? Because I think there's so much potential there, and it's got such a large participation rate, particularly at young levels, but at the moment, we're probably not seeing that filter all the way through to the top level.
Yeah, there's definitely so much potential, and it's amazing to see all the young talent coming through in the A leagues. But I think the thing that I found over here is how good they do the youth systems. There's lots of different age groups. There's even a 23s, and I think or 21s, and I think that's so important to help bridge the gap between the players that you lose from the under 17s, that then they're finishing school and they're not sure whether they should commit to football, or they should study, because they haven't got the support or the belief that they can continue playing football, because it jumps from under 17s to then senior football, and girls are still developing there. So I think I think it'd be really great to see, another age group added in there to help support those girls and still give them a development pathway into the senior environments.
I guess that's from like a, a structural perspective about, you're talking about age groups and filtering through the club and pathways and stuff like that. Is there anything now? I want to preface: you've not had Sean specifically as a strength coach, so we're not ratting you out here on anything, Sean. But from like a training perspective, when you were here in Australia and in that system, and now being where you are, overseas and playing in Europe, is there anything specifically from, to the level of coaching or strength and conditioning? Is there anything that's done differently or really well where you are in comparison to over here?
Uh, I think everyone's got some really like same ideas, great ideas, but I think over here there seems to be a lot more access to it. So there's a lot more staff, in the medical, in the strength setting, in the technical staff, and the facilities at a higher level as well. So I think that makes a huge difference you know when you've got enough staff to help support players. I think that then just hand in hands goes with better development and better support of the players. So I think that's something that I would love to see implemented more into some Australian clubs for sure.
That's on you, Shawnee. That's your role.
All right, I'll keep chipping away at it. And look,
So just
honestly,
some more Sean's.
I am very excited. It's by the time this goes out, obviously, it's been announced that I am getting more involved with the women's program as well and our youth programs too. I completely agree, and something we'll be pushing with the club is to try to maybe we've got a male youth academy at the moment, but we don't have that in the female side. Obviously, it does come down to resources, but maybe we can do some fundraising or some sponsorships through PEAQ and get that happening. But really passionate about that. We did an episode maybe a month or so ago where we talked about our experiences in all female sports, and have just loved the inclusion and the energy and that sort of family-like environment. So certainly passionate about that. I guess just a quick few questions to finish us off here. What do you think the biggest mistake that young players make in their journey?
Uh, that's a tough one because I think maybe it comes down to maybe the setup, but also maybe the decisions. I think sometimes players may feel like uh, that opportunity hasn't come up early on, so then they think then they might give up. But I also think then that's also there's maybe not enough, like I mentioned before, not enough support or resources, age groups to give girls other opportunities to go into. So I think that it's just like I mentioned before, when I think a lot around that age group when you're finishing school and you're like, oh, I haven't made it yet. So then maybe I'll go study, or I haven't made it yet, so I'll study and play football. But it's really hard to still develop at a really high level when you're only doing it part time, or when you can't commit full time to something. And I think that's probably it's maybe not it's maybe a mistake by the system rather than the players itself. But I think that's the biggest challenge.
Do you have any pre-game superstitions?
Oh, I try to steer away from them because then it just gets too stressful. But I do have, like, I always have to retie my shoelaces before I step on the pitch. So, like, I'll tie them up normally, and then if I'm like getting subbed on or I'm starting the game, I always have to tie them up just before I walk out. I don't know, it makes me feel like I'm ready to go or something.
What do you have one specific word, whether that's a feeling, a sensation, or to describe what it feels like playing for the Matildas?
Oh, that's hard. And it's just a huge honor. Yeah.
And what's the best advice you have ever received?
Oh, I've had a lot of great advice, but one that always sticks with me is to focus on what you can control. I think that's probably the one that stuck with me the most.
Probably the last and most important question: who squats more, yourself or your beautiful fiance, Lockie?
Oh, I'm sure it's Lucky. He's
Oh, you're
very
too
strong.
humble.
He told me to say that
This is your opportunity to smash him, but that's
he's
okay.
big and muscly. I think I've got better hamstrings than him though, so I'll take that.
Well played.
Hey, Charles, it is an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule. We are always so grateful to have that shining smile come through our doors whenever you're in Australia. I'm sure the whole, not just the whole state, the whole country is so proud of your journey. We can't wait to see where it continues to take you. And thank you for always being an amazing part of our community.
Thanks so much for having me, guys. Looking forward to seeing you soon in Adelaide.
So what did we take away from that episode with Charlie? For me, it was really grabbing those one percenters. And we hear it all the time in elite sport, do the one percenters. But Charlie really outlined what that meant for her and the sacrifices that she took to ensure that she could play at her best and reach the top.
From my end, I love when she talked about, taking those opportunities. Life's short and you've always got home to come back to. But when you are over there, lean into connection and try to develop your network as quickly as possible.